Okay. So what is due today is lab 6, and that's sort of like if you're keeping up with the nominal schedule. We're about done the material that will be on test 1, so probably next week I'll start saying, when do you have major exams coming up? So I can sort of come up with a time where most of you don't have a major exam, so that I don't give you 2 exams on the same day. So be looking, so next week I'll be asking you, when do you have tests coming up? So if you have, from your other courses, when the tests are, sort of let me know. You can let me know during class or ahead of time or what have you. But so that next week I will be asking that.
What will the test consist of then?
The test will be like a lab scenario. So I will say, write an app that. It will probably spread over 2 days. So I'll squeeze a good part of the material into one exam, one half of the exam, and the sort of rest in the other half of the exam. So like if I do buttons here, I'll do spinners over there or something. So I'll break it up in terms of different things. One of the on one of them, you will have to like make a layout. Like I won't give you a layout. It'll be a relatively simple layout, but I will give you a layout and you'll have to like make a layout and then code that layout. You'll be at you're going to write it at, using Android Studio in whatever way you normally work in Android Studio. It's not like a paper exam. So if you want to, you could always just type XML, that works. If you want to drag things, if you want to copy from other examples, any way in which you're comfortable working is fine. It's just that I'm not going to hand you an XML. Any way that you can come up with making the XML is perfectly fine, except copying it from somebody else in the class or something. So you'll not know what the interface, the design is going to be. It can't be too much. It can't be too wild, but it will. You don't, will I say I want a text view and then a button, or will I say a button and then a text view? There'll be small variations, but it should be something fairly straightforward. But any way in which you want to make it, so long as you are the one making it on that day, is fine. Again, you can drag things, that's valid. You can copy, type things, you can copy other things that you have and modify them, however. Here. Okay. So it will be, it won't be next week, but we'll start planning for it next week. The times, it'll probably be over 2 days, almost definitely over 2 days. One of those days, you will have to make a layout. The other day, I'll probably give you a layout. So there'll be more focus on the KT, the coding on that day than on, because to do all the constraints can be time consuming. So I will come up with 2 ideas, and then when I have one idea, will have probably a simpler interface, and then that will be the one that you'll have to make the interface, and the other one with the more complicated interface, maybe I'll hand to you. Doesn't mean you can't, if I hand you an interface, that doesn't mean you can't touch it. If I may give you, oh, here's all this, here's an image in a radio group and blah, 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 all sorts of stuff. You're allowed to come in and especially give it an ID and things like that. So it's not, I can't touch the file if he gives it to me. That's not the point. The point is just for you to not spend all your time coding, creating the interface. And I will have, when I have you creating the interface, I will have a Word document to sort of say, here's what mine looked like. So you'll have a picture in your mind. You won't be sort of coming up with this is what I want it to look like, you will have a picture of, it doesn't have to look exactly, but it should look roughly like mine. So it will be, you won't have to imagine what it should look like and then make it. You'll have a picture, make it like this. All right. So again, so test is not next week, but we'll start talking about it next week in terms of timing. We're cutting off the material relatively soon, maybe today. And it will be 2 parts, and one you'll definitely have to make a layout. Good questions that they didn't ask early.
It's not be open book.
Yeah, you'll be able to look at your old projects, go to the Canvas site, Google things. Yeah, you're going to be writing real code at a computer. I'm going to be walking around, but I'm not going to sort of block that you can't go to this website or anything like that. I don't believe in that stuff. But I'm walking around, so if you have nothing and then all of a sudden in the last 10 minutes, all of a sudden you have something completely working, I'm going to be pretty suspicious that if you just, somebody just sent you a file, I usually know because I walk around and watch and watch and watch. And I don't know if people are going to be allowed to stay home or people at home. On the test, I may say you need to come in so I can watch over your shoulder. So, all right. What was due nominally today to be keeping up is this was the spinner in the image where you're making your own, figure out what you're interested in, make it. And today is pretty similar. You're making your own again, except now this time you have to read the information from a text file and you have to have a class and you have to have objects of your class. But this one, most people find sort of fun and straightforward. And this one, I think, is mostly fun and straightforward in that it's, again, topic of your interest. And you usually just do what I did, but change the properties to your properties and so on. Okay. Our last meeting, we read files. So we're going to continue with reading files. And when we read files previously, we read the whole file. So we set up a stream, and then we said, read that file. And we had the whole file. And most of the time we spit out the whole damn file. And then the very last time we played that game where we broke it up into words. But now I want to, in today's, the structure of a line is going to be more important today. So first thing we're going to do is read a code like one line at a time. Before I start going over the new examples, any questions? Yeah, some good questions about the test.
So the labs are due before the test, right?
So I will say, here's where the material cuts off. And then I will say, those are the labs that are due the day. Now, I will say to be eligible for full credit that those labs are due by the end of the day of the second day of the test. So I will be very lenient in terms of when I start calling things late. But you better have them all done. It's much better to have them all done before you take the first day of the test, because you're allowed to use them on your test. And I won't necessarily, I may break up the test and it may be the part that you didn't do may be on the first test. So it's better if you have them all done. But you don't have to, they're still eligible for full credit until the end of the day of the second part of the test. Okay. All right. So read line by line. Let's see what this looks like. Okay. So I have these files. So my activity is just a button and a text view. I'm just going to click a button and I'm going to read a line of a file and put it in a text view. So I already set up, you saw I had a working hello world. That's what I recommend for you for the day of the test, is to get here on time or early and get yourself set up with a working hello world. You can use your own machine, you can use the machine in front of you, you can use both. Paste, there we go. Because I allow you to paste things on the test, I will sometimes hold points for, did you change the names appropriately? Like if my example is dogs and you switched over to cats, but you left all of everything that I labeled as a dog, so as dog, sometimes and it won't be 10 points, it will be a point or something like that, but I will be, do things have you changed the names to reflect what you're doing rather than our previous example. Okay. So there I brought over the layout. Now I want to bring over the main. So that I'm done with this. I want to copy all except for the package. Copy all but paste all of the package. And then it's yelling at me, and that's because I'm trying to read a file, and so it's looking for a resource that I haven't set up yet. It's looking for the dog data in the raw. Okay, so we played this game before. You remember it. The raw is a resource, but it's not there yet, so we need to right-click and say new, and we're going to make a directory. And I'm labeling it raw, small letters. That's part of our naming scheme, is small letters. So raw and small letters. And then that dog file goes there. So I'm going to copy the dog file, and then I'm going to right click and paste the dog file into raw. Okay, so there's my dog file. And now the red has gone away. Stop hello world and start. That's from previous, that's from a week ago, dog day. And now here's read line, terribly exciting program. So I read the file line by line. I think I have 10 dogs. And then it tells me that there are no more lines and it's grayed out the button, so I stop clicking it. Okay, so again, previously we read a file, but we read the whole file. We set up an input stream, we're still going to have to do that. But then the way we used the input stream previously was we just sort of said, read that file, read all of that file, make one great big string. This time we're not making one great big string from the whole file. We are reading one line at a time. Okay, so connect to the interface. Here's the button, here's the text view. Here's the input stream connecting to the raw resource. I'm using this time a buffered reader. The buffered reader is going to allow me to read a line at a time. So this line has changed. Line 27 is different than it was before. Before we read everything all at once. Now we're going to read line by line, and so this is different. Here's my button read on the on-click event handler. Here's the reading the next line. So the buffer we set up. So we set up the stream, then we set up the buffered reader connected to the stream, and then buffer has a method of read line. So we're going to read one line. And we're going to call that line, it'll be a string, whatever you read in, we'll call it next underscore line. Then I'm going to ask a question about it. If the next line is not null, then I'm going to display that next line. If it is null, if I get to the else, then I said no more lines. I disable the button, I close the string, or I close the buffer reader. The exception never happened, but the exception is if something other than what, so I was reading lines that went okay. The line could be null. That did happen at the end of the file. The catch didn't really happen, but I put one there anyway. I could put a catch up here where I'm establishing the input stream and the buffered reader. Something could go wrong there. If I put an image file, say, in my raw folder, it might complain to me that, you know, you're trying to read a file that's not really set up for reading or something like that. Okay. Any questions on that? So we can read line by line. Sometimes you want to read line by line when you have a super big file and you don't want to have too much of it in your memory at once. So before we read it all at once. So however big the file was, we put that into a variable. So we had to have a variable that could hold a lot of stuff, a file's worth of stuff. So if you had too much information in a file, you might not be able to read it all at once and put it into one variable. Okay, so sometimes you might need to read line by line. The next thing we're going to do, it's going to be a compromise. So what we did the last time was we read the whole file at once. Boom, there it was in a file, or in a string. So we read all the file, we made one string. That's what we did in the first time we read a file. Now what we just did, we read one line at a time. Our next thing is going to be a compromise. We're going to read sort of the whole file and be done with it, but instead of making a single variable, a single string variable out of it, we're going to sort of make, I'm not going to be very technical about whether it's an array or a list. I'm just going to use vague terms. I'll probably just say array. So I'm going to make an array of strings, one for each line. So here I'm literally reading the file one line at a time. So I read and I read and I read, and my stream is open. And until I'm done, I have that stream open. In the first time we read it all at once. So all the reading occurred immediately. This is an in-between. I'm reading everything sort of all at once, but I'm not making one thing, I'm making an array of things. So I'm dealing with lines as independent things, but I'm going to make sort of an array of lines. So I'm dealing with them all at once, but they still have a certain independence. So it's sort of halfway between the two previous ways we've read. Okay, so that's our next thing. So let me get that. So clear out version 1, get version 2. So now we're going to read lines, and I'm back to the dogs. I'm making, well, that previous one was also dogs, but now I'm going to have images of dogs. And okay, so it's the same dog file, so I don't need that. I try to send you stuff so that they're all independent. The activity main, I'm now going to have a picture. You can tell by I have what are going to be drawable resources. So this is changed and the code is changed. So I need to do that. So I'm on activity main, Control A, Control C, over here, change the layout. And now I have a text view. I have a spinner. I have an image view. I have a text view, a text view, a text view. Okay, and it's yelling at me for some things. Some of the things I'm going to fix and some of them I'm not. Okay, so that was activity main. Now main activity. Everything but the package. Main activity. Everything but the package. And it should still be complaining here and there because I have some drawable resources that I don't have yet. So I need to take the pictures of the dogs. So I'm done with this. And I dealt with activity main. I dealt with main activity. I have my dogs. I need to put them in the drawable resources. So copy my dogs, right click, paste. Okay. Okay. So now I have my dogs in my drawable resource. Remember our naming scheme, small letters, underscores, numbers, can't start with numbers. So I'm obeying my naming scheme. Raw still has dog data. It was just the same dog data as before, so I didn't touch it, but it is being used by this program. Okay. Now, so we looked at activity main. It had just text view at the top that says pick a dog breed. What this wants, what will make this shut up, it's a backward compatibility thing. They used to call it margin left, now they call it margin start. And for backward compatibility purposes, they want you to say both of them. But that's what will make that shut up. Usually, like if it's yellow, I don't know why that's red. It sort of works without it. And here it is margin start, margin start, margin start. Okay, I'm too lazy to fix them all. Okay. But that's what was fixing that. But we saw that it was a text view, a spinner, an image view, and then 3 text views. And we know the drawable, we know what the dog data looks like. It is information about dogs, and I'm going to do some parsing this time, and my delimiter is a slash. I have, in my colors of the dogs, I already have commas within that text that I wanted, and so I couldn't use a comma. That's a common delimiter. A common delimiter is the comma, but I have commas in my data, so I wanted a different delimiter. I used backslash. If you have quotes in your text, you might need to come along and backslash it. So if your program is choking on your data file, you may have some things that need, if you have odd symbols, not very straightforwardly easy typed symbols, that might be an issue. And certain things like single and double quotes may need to be escaped. You might need to turn them into an escape sequence. Okay, let's look finally at the main activity. Okay, so now this time again, it's the compromise. First time we read everything at once, one string variable. The last time we are reading one line at a time. Now we're going to read lines, but we're going to read them all at once, and we're going to create an array out of them. I'm not being careful about my language. There are arrays, there are lists, there are array lists, there are mutable array lists. Most of the time, I'm not going to be careful unless something, copy. Don't listen to what I say. Listen to what's sort of typed on my page, because that's working code. Let's prove it's working code. Dog day was from a week ago. This one is hello world 923. That's today. B, because this is the second section. So we have working code. Okay. What do we have? The normal connect to the interface stuff. The input stream and set up as a buffered reader. Again, because we're not reading it all at once, we are working with the lines. Here I'm reading the lines. Here's the buffer that I just set up. I'm reading all the lines and calling it lines. I'm done reading the file. From now on, when I work through the lines of the file, I'm working through an array of strings. I'm done with the file. But the line structure is respected because now it's an array of lines. I had a spinner. You saw then I had a spinner. I want to put things into a spinner. I don't want to put all the information in the spinner. That's too much information for my spinner. All I want is the name of the dog. So I have to do some parsing. So I loop through my lines and I split them up. Sometimes I say split, sometimes I say parse. If I say parse, I mean I'm breaking it into pieces. And so, but the code for that is called split, and I'm splitting it on the delimiter of a slash. And then the first thing is the name of the dog. And I have here, I said it was a mutable list of dog names. That's what I'm going to use to populate my spinner. That was what was in my spinner was dog names. Border collie. Okay. So now that I have that established, I go to my spinner. I use the array adapter. Dog names was a code array. I'm using the simple spinner item look. And then once I set up the adapter, then I use that adapter and connect it, make it the adapter of my spinner. And that puts all the dogs into my spinner. Then I'm going to move on to the spinner event. The spinner event, there's always two methods, and one of them I almost never, I don't think I've ever in my life done anything down here, but he usually wants it, so I give it to it. The on item selected comes in with the adapter view, which I don't think I've ever done anything with, the view, which I have, the int and long. I usually work with the view and the int. So when I have this spinner, when I sort of hit the arrow to see what's in there, then each of those things is a view. The boxer, the word boxer, that's in a little view. Bloodhound, that's in a little view. And then when I pick one, bulldog, that little bulldog view, that view that was showing you the word bulldog, that's sent to you. That's here. An int is the position in the array. So Alaskan Malamute, it would send me a 0. Australian cattle dog would send me a 1. Old English sheepdog would send me a 2, etc. I tend not to use L, but I think L is the same as I, just cast as a different type, so as a long. Okay. So view can tell me the name of the dog. So I have a little text here, sorry, a little toast here. And I'm using the this view, I'm saying, and specifically it was a text view, when I'm grabbing its text and making it a string. And so I'm just showing you the name of the dog. Next, I'm going to work with the I. I have basically a parallel array. I have the lines of the file and I have the names of the dogs that made up my spinner. I can think of those are parallel arrays. They share the same index. And so I can use this index that I got from the spinner, and I can use it with my lines of dogs, of dog info. And so here's my lines array, and I'm parsing it again. I'm not parsing all of them. I'm parsing the one that corresponds to the dog that the user chose. So then I have my tokens. I'm taking the first token, which is the name of the dog. Remember, the way I work, I have a relationship between the drawable resource, the dog image files, and the names of the dogs. I have a relationship that I take the name, I put it into all small letters, I put it in lowercase, and any spaces I replace with underscores. And that's the name of my drawable resource. So I took border collie, which had a capital B and a capital C and a space, and made it all small letters and replaced the space with an underscore. And now I have the name of my drawable resource. Once I have the name of my drawable resource, they have methods for me to get the ID. So now I'm getting the ID of a drawable resource using the package. So the package tells me my namespace. So I'm looking within the drawables, within this namespace, I'm looking for the thing with this name, border_collie, and I'm finding its ID, some weird behind the scenes thing. And then I'm using that number to set the image of the image view of the dog, and I see the picture of the dog. And then I'm displaying the information about the dog. I split up tokens. I split up the line into tokens. Token 0 was the name of the dog. Tokens 1 was the average height of the dog in inches. Tokens 2 was the colors of the dog, and tokens 3 was the characteristics. So a beagle is on average 14 inches, comes in black and tan, and is cheerful. Any questions? So down at the bottom. I don't do anything here, and that's the end of the spinner event. There's on create, there's main activity. Any questions? Okay, last one is what you have to do. So basically your lab is pretty much a copy of my third example, except you change to your stuff because you're choosing the topic. And here we are, dog objects. So I'm going to make a class. I'm going to make objects of that class. So here's all the stuff. Dog data is the same. It's the same data, the same dogs. The activity main is the same. It's the same image view, spinner, yada, yada, yada. The dogs I already have, the KT and the main. So there's a whole new file because I made a class. And then I'm using that class. So the KTs are what are different. So let me open them in Notepad. Okay. So I'm making a class. So I have this information about a dog, right? I have the height of the dog and the colors of the dog and the characteristics of the dog and the name of the dog. I have all this information about a dog. And then I have different dogs, but they all have the same type of data. So they all obey the same, they have the same type of data runs around. It's just the actual values are different. And that's what we have sort of objects for. An object can be a lot more than that, but that's on the first line, like the first time we encounter objects, it is to sort of gather together information that belong together somehow, that all that information is about the same dog breed, and then have it move around together, but to be able to access the individual parts of it. So when I bring up the dog object that is a border collie, I will have access to the color of the border collie and the character of the border collie and the height of the border collie. So our objects, having objects of a class, is a way to sort of collect together information and have it move around as a unit. So that is our goal. So we're going to have, I have here a dog class. So I'm going to now write I'm going to copy and paste basically, but we're going to write a class that has the information related to the dog. The class is KT, it's code, so it belongs up here next to main activity. If we put it any other place, then we're going to have to go through extra work to import it. So for now, I'm just going to put it here. That's the easy way. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to say new, and I'm going to make a Kotlin class. And then I'm going to call the class dog. That's the name of my class. Okay. So one more time, I'm not going to do it again, but I'm going to show you what I did. I right-clicked here, I said new, I said Kotlin class. And then I gave it a name, and I named it, when I said I wanted a class called dog, it named the file dog, and it gave me this dog class dog. So it gave me the package, because I right-clicked pretty much effectively on the package to say add the new Kotlin file, so it knows what package I'm in. I gave it a name. It used that name both as the name of the class and as the name of the file. In some languages, that has to be, there has to be that correspondence. I think Java's that way. I think Java insists that they have the same name. Sometimes it can be just a convention, sometimes it's a requirement. Basically, I just always name them. I'm used to it as a requirement, so I always tend to name them that way. So I don't know if I could change the name or not, but if we could test that if anybody wants. Okay, so now what is the code? I'm going to copy the interior of my dog class and paste it. And basically, I am defining my properties. Again, an object, sorry, a class can have more, can have methods. Today, I'm not doing any methods. Sometimes I have like a method just to, in principle, show that you can have a method, but not today. Today is just about properties. So there's a breed, an average height. I'm going to say that's an int, colors, and character. So that's the information we're moving around. And then we're going to make a constructor, and I'm going to assume that we know everything in the constructor. There are different ways to do a constructor. I can have a trivial constructor where I assume I know nothing, and I can have a constructor where I know everything and everything, you know, and I can have constructors in between. But right now I'm keeping it simple, so I'm just going to assume when I make a dog, I'm going to know everything about the dog. So I'm going to say when the person outside of the class, when the person using the class is making an object of my class and they're using the constructor, they're going to send me 4 things. They're going to send me a string, which I'm going to use to set the breed name. They're going to send me an integer, which I'm going to assume is the average height of the dog. They're going to send me a string that I'm going to assume is the color. And they're going to send me a string, which I'm going to assume is the characteristic of the dog. Okay. This, what's here on the, I have to hold up my hand to make sure I'm saying right and left correctly. The right, what's on the right has to match what comes in from the constructor. So breed underscore data has to match up here, breed underscore data. It doesn't have to be breed underscore data. Could be poop, but this and this match. Whereas what's over here on the left-hand side matches the property that we defined above as belonging to a property of an object of this class. Okay. Some people are in the habit of calling this breed, and that's perfectly fine. It's a convention, it works. Sometimes I follow that convention myself, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But these work as a team, then this ends up being used when we refer to it here, and this corresponds to this. So it's possible to give them the same name. That's a convention some people like. Okay, just so you know. In some languages, you have to explicitly have what are called getters and setters. You have to say, here's how I'm going to change a breed name. Here's how I'm going to read a breed name. But it's in Kotlin being a more modern language. It just says, we know you need those things, and if they're standard and straightforward, we're just going to give them to you automatically. So there it is. Okay. So the main things we need properties, and then we need a constructor so we can make a dog. And we're going to have a constructor that knows everything straight out of the block and sets all the parameters. All right. And then main activity. Okay. I am in the same package. I'm in the same package, so I don't need to import my class because I'm in the same package. So the package is sort of managing things for me, and since dog is in the same package, I don't have to say import dog. Okay, standard imports, main activity, on create. What do we have to look at? What's new? Connect to the interface, that's old. Set up an input stream, raw import, raw resource dog data, set up a buffered reader, read all the lines and call them lines, make in this case, a mutable list of dog names. This is the old one, sorry. I didn't copy over main activity yet. Just getting to the part that should change, and it didn't change. Okay. Try it one more time. Connect to the interface. Ah, here's something that's different. I am making an array list of dog type. So that's what's going to hold. As I make a dog, I have to make a dog object, and then I add a dog object to my list of dogs. So here I am saying I'm going to have something of the dog type. It's not yelling at me. That means it knows what the dog type is. I did not import the dog type, but I know what the dog type is because it's in the same package. So connect to the interface, make an array list of dog types. So that's going to be my dogs. Input stream, raw resource, buffered reader, read the lines. That's an array of lines. Make a mutable list for the dog names that I'm going to use for my spinner. I loop through my lines. I split up on the delimiter of slash. The first token, the 0th token, is the name of my dog. So I'm setting up my dog names array to use with my spinner. I am making a dog with that new information. So here's dog, that is calling the constructor of my class. And I'm sending it the tokens 0, tokens 1, tokens 2, tokens 3. This thing was the height of the dog, which was an integer, so I cast it as an integer. And then when I've made a dog, I add it to my bunch of dogs. Okay. Yes, I don't know, maybe. I made my little dog name array so that I can use that to populate the spinner. That's here. Then I have my event listener, my spinner event listener. And again, I usually work with two things. I work with the view, which is the thing that you saw in the dropdown, the particular one, the one that you chose, like border collie, and then the int, which is my sort of position in the array. I'm showing it in a toast. I'm using what you saw, which was the name of the dog, to make the resource name, put it all lowercase, get rid of the space, make it an underscore, take that name, get an ID, use that ID to set the image of the image view. That's the old stuff. We've done that. We talked about it. Now here's the new stuff, using the objects, and the objects are in an array. So breeds is an array list, probably mutable array list, I don't know, one of those things. But the ith one is a dog. So breeds is some array thing, but breeds I is an element of that and is a dog, because we said that breeds was this group of dogs. So now it's a dog, and then I can use the dog properties, like average dot is our usual way to get from an object to, say, the property of an object. So it's a normal dot notation. So here's breeds I as an object, and average underscore height underscore inches as a property of that object, as is colors, as is character. And then I'm at the bottom, there's the do nothing method, and I'm down at the bottom of the main activity class. Questions? This is the one that you have to do. So you can pick the same topic you use for lab 6, or you can give a new topic if you're bored. Some data file that you're going to parse. Some activity main where you're going to have a spinner and an image and some text views to show some things. Some drawable resources. Make sure you're following the naming scheme. Got to make sure you're following the naming scheme here as well. And then you need a class for your information. It has to you have to have class, and then in the main activity, you're going to read the file, parse the file, make an array of your objects, and then when the user picks an object, using the spinner, display the information about that object, about that item, using the object. Any questions? You're not using the.
We're not that modifying the string.
I did some string manipulation here. We're not. I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll talk a little while and I'll say, did I answer the question? You'll probably say no, but that's okay. We're not doing string manipulation like we did on the very last time we read the entire file at once, because we're working instead, we're not working with the entire file, we're only working with a line at a time. So there was some up here. Split is a thing that belongs to, so item, lines was an array of strings. So item is a string, and I'm splitting the string. So I'm working with strings there. And then down here, when in the spinner, I'm doing some string manipulation here to go from border collie, capital B, space, and collie down to small letters, border underscore collie. So there's still some string stuff, but not the same string stuff as before.
You know how we have that parallel.
Oh, that,
Yeah.
no, you're not going to put, you're not putting the information in here. You're making your own separate file.
Oh.
So it's not in their values. So you're not putting your data here in an XML format. You're putting it here in some delimited format. So, and I keep moving it around just so you know all the ways. So one time I said, put your information in values. Another time I said, make it code arrays. And now I'm saying, put it in a separate data file. So And then I will come around one more time and I'll say, make it a JSON file. So we keep doing the same things, but we're raising our level of sophistication. So now another thing we will do in terms of level of sophistication is we will go out to the internet and read somebody else's file. So we need to be able to put it in different places and know how to work with it in all the different places. And so eventually we want to there's one more sophisticated, actually two. The XMLs here are XMLs that Android made. One day we will read an XML that somebody other than Android Studio made. And that will take some extra work because these ones, it knows what to expect. The thing about XML is that it's extensible, that you can make up your own tags. Well, Android Studio's made up its own tags. It knows what to expect. And if you obey its rules, it does a lot of work for you because it's its own file. When you bring in your own XML, then it's going to be a little harder work on you because you can't expect your code to understand the file, a generic XML file. So we're not done reading files by any stretch of imagination. We have to read JSON, we have to read XML, and we have to read from the internet. So we're moving up levels. We're going to keep moving up levels. We have a couple more levels to move up. Anything else? Just the ear scratch? Okay. All right, I'm going to stop recording and hang out for questions.